Hi, and welcome back to the continuation of this color chart. Let me show you that. Okay, I got both of them up. Today, I'm going to work on this column here, the 1-to-1 between transparent red iron oxide and phthalo blue. I think these are going to be the really interesting mixtures where I'll get kind of back into these greens that I mixed up before, and I think it's going to be really great. Today, man, I wish I had a little bit more energy today, but for some reason today, I'm not very high energy, got low energy. So I'm just going to keep this short for the preamble to this and just kind of quietly work on the 1-to-1 mixture and kind of time lapse through it. Originally, I think I was going to make this video on YouTube, one whole entire video where you could just watch from beginning to end. But there's so many insights and different pieces of information that I'm figuring out on this that it'll be a constant interruption. So I'm going to break this up into each session, each kind of daily session. And I think even then those videos are going to be kind of long. So hopefully they're helpful, they're useful. The purpose of this video specifically in this color chart is supposed to be super useful for you. So please let me know in the comments below if this is useful, if it's helpful, if you have any questions or whatever. I love answering the questions. Maybe I'll answer them on a new video. But anyway, I'm going to get into mixing here and I will talk to you at the end to let you know what I figured out. Maybe I'll get through a couple columns. We'll see. We'll see. I'm not going to push myself today because, it's one of those days where I think it's a good time to relax and just enjoy putting paint down. Yeah. Yeah, I continue to learn all kinds with these mixtures. It's just absolutely fantastic. Every single row, I'm learning something new. And for this row, probably the biggest thing that I've learned, and maybe you can see this on camera, probably with the lighter colors, no matter how much I change these lights, if I brighten them up, it really blows out all the lighter colors. If I don't brighten them up, you can't see the darker colors. The camera that I got it just can't parse all that subtle information, unfortunately. So I can guide you through it for the most part. But I've noticed that the mixtures from one color to the next, it's not a big deal from yellow ochre to transparent iron oxide because this transition is mostly due to value. So that was a bit easier. But the transition from transparent red iron oxide to phthalo blue, the transition from here to here, getting these columns to transfer or transition smoothly from full transparent red to 2-to-1, 1-to-1, 1-to-2, and then full phthalo blue is much more difficult because their value is really dark and the difference in intensity is tremendous. It's absolutely tremendous. So really this transition is all about saturation and intensity. As you can see, these first two columns, obviously the transparent red iron oxide, very orangey kind of red pale color, right? And then we get a little bit more neutral and then bam, into these kind of greenish grays. They went green. I was like, wow, why green? Where is the yellow at in these colors? Where's the yellow? How did I get green out of this? And so I really felt like I needed to have a transition color right in the margin between these two because the jump was so large. And I think that was partly my fault because I just realized that this transition is all about saturation. And the difference between transparent red iron oxide and phthalo blue, when you're talking about saturation, is tremendous. It's huge. Well, my palette is pretty much full of paint right now, but let's say this mixture here, it does have a little bit of, every color in it. But if I take a big chunk of phthalo blue and I put it in this lighter color, I'm going to get just a super bright saturated blue. Look how crazy that is. It's super bright, and that's even dulled down a little bit. That isn't just pure phthalo blue. It's very, very saturated. It's much more saturated than transparent red iron oxide. So I don't have the perfect transition from 2 to 1, 1 to 1, 1 to 2. I think this 2 to 1 column should be a bit more influenced by phthalo blue in order for it to be, a better transition, a nicer transition. But that's okay. We got these little margins. I can kind of see what's going on in between them. And after putting that in, honestly, I'm thinking, oh, okay, that seems like a natural transition between this swatch and that swatch. So it's nice to have those margins in there. But the realization between value and saturation transition, really kind of nice to understand that. I'm going to go on to the 1 to 2 mixture. That's going to be mostly phthalo blue. And this is going to get pretty close to this color. If you notice during the time lapse, I mixed up a color that was something probably like this, similar to this here, because I wanted to see, I was thinking of how intense that phthalo blue was, and I wanted to test how close I was in transition from the 1 to 1 to the 1 to 2 mixture, and I felt like that was pretty close. It's almost like an army green color. It's really interesting. Came up with army green. But this is going to be a nice mixture next that I'm going to make, definitely closer to the phthalo blue. All right, I'm excited. Let's see how that column comes out now. So I now understand the meaning of garish, because this column, there's no other way to explain it. I mean, comparatively, and that's another thing to mention, all color is, relative. All this is about comparison with each other. And this column, the 1 to 2, is garish. And it's not even the most intense that phthalo blue can get, because this is mixed with a little bit of transparent red iron oxide. So it is neutralized a little bit, a tiny bit. And I know it's going to get even more garish with phthalo blue by itself. Just crazy mixture here. Honestly, as soon as I mixed this column up, I was thinking, or as soon as I got the first few colors down here, I was thinking, this is a mistake. This whole palette is a mistake, because when am I ever going to use these colors, especially in a figure? And I knew right away I had to do the transition right in the margin there just to see the difference between 1 to 1 and 1 to 2. It's extremely garish. It is so far away from a nice, harmonious, and analogous palette that I'm wondering if I would ever, use this palette now. Because I feel like if I did, I could use this color as like, a punch for something. I'm not sure what. But I feel like 90% of the time I would be, every time I mixed phthalo blue, or I would pull up some phthalo blue, I would mix it with something else to tone it down, to neutralize it, to bring it back in line with the entirety of the palette. Now that may sound like a negative, but it's great that I'm doing this here rather than on paintings, right? Maybe starting a new painting and I really screwed up by using this mixture. I don't know, So I'm learning so much. And in this reference here, where I can compare all the possibilities right next to each other, this is where I can learn these kind of things. But the great thing about this column, the really nice thing, is the 1 to 2 mixture of just straight transparent red iron oxide and phthalo blue. I get this really nice black color. You can barely tell it with this darn camera, but it's a very nice dark, kind of cool-ish color. That'd be wonderful for, a black replacement. Because I know on a lot of palettes, look at Richard Schmid for one person, one that I really know, is they don't use black. They'll use a mixture of alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, and like a burnt umber to make their black mixture, which is nice. It's kind of like a chromatic black where you can push it either to a warmer blackish color or a cooler blackish color. Pretty nice mixture on that. But yeah, garish, a garish mixture. It is definitely broke the harmonious, I feel broke the harmonious idea of this palette and went much further than I expected. Although these gutter mixtures that I made, where it's just neutralized with a little bit more transparent red iron oxide, just a little bit more neutralized, pretty nice. I like those. All the way up into this gutter, and then Garish City starts. In Garish Town with a lot of garish people wearing very garish clothing. Sorry for that analogy. Anyway, I think I'm going to go ahead and do the next column because it's just phthalo blue. And then, we have a new accent because we're going phthalo blue to yellow ochre. Those are going to be some greens. I mean, from over here, there's going to be some crazy greens over here, I know. So, but at the bottom, there's going to be a trace of trio, TRIO, transparent red iron oxide. So in this column, I'll probably get some similar mixtures to up here. Probably. We'll see. I'm going to go ahead and work on that next. Okay, when or if you do the same experiment, exercise, whatever you want to call it, when you're dealing with these intense colors and white, especially when I'm dealing with, Winton white, which does not hold its own when being mixed with any other color because its tinting strength is really low. You'll see things like this, and I don't know if you can tell that, but everything around this color here is got this bluish green tone, and then this one goes way too warm. It's really wonderful to see that comparison, to see that happen, to see a discordant color happen within, one area, and to be able to tell that. This is part of the exercise to, in a lot of ways, increase your sensitivity to color and value. And I think just for that alone, because you're seeing everything in a dense comparative, and it will begin to give you a deeper understanding of how subtle everything can be. I think it's really nice. It's really, really nice. That being said, that color is definitely off, so I'm mixing up a new one, which is pretty easy with these columns. These are the beginning columns for each color. So it's just a 2-color mixture plus white, which is a color, by the way. We tend to say that like white is not a color. It is a color. It has all the same attributes as color: saturation, value, hue. But anyway, I won't go into that. So let me put down the color that it should be, in my opinion. Oh, and my brush was a little dirty. I need to lighten it up and bring a little bit more of that color in there. This Phthalo Blue is so strong. It is tremendously strong. It is destroying every single color that I add into it, just taking over these piles. And the intensity continues. The garishness, is that even a word? The garishness of this color, I think, continues as well. Although it's really interesting, to see something like this and think about the Zorn palette, which I don't have the color chart to that one close. Let me grab that real quick. Because the Zorn color chart, the Zorn palette does have an accent, and that's the cadmium red here. But it doesn't feel that discordant compared to all the other colors for some reason. I mean, maybe it's because the warmth of it? I don't know. Maybe because it is so warm, it fits easier. It fits well. But looking at this, oh my gosh, that is, and I thought that transparent red iron oxide was super intense. This is glowing. It is beyond blue. It is the most blue thing ever. If I compare this palette that I'm working on right now with the burnt sienna Payne's gray, so see the yellow ochre, burnt sienna, Payne's gray, we see a much more harmonious palette here. I do like the transparent red iron oxide. You get more intense in these colors, which is nice. Those like peachy tones going towards red. But look how different Payne's gray is from Phthalo Blue. And this isn't even talking about, ivory black to Phthalo Blue. There's no comparison. It's just so different. But it might be interesting, even though I'm looking at these colors and I'm thinking, well, not these colors, but this one color, Phthalo Blue, and I'm thinking it's so discordant, it's so different from everything else, maybe it's a good challenge to use within a painting. Can I make intensity, things this intense, or colors this intense, work within a painting that's overly unsaturated, overly analogous? You'd have to be very, very careful where you place these colors within a painting. And this is another reason why a limited color palette is so much easier to work with, so much easier to understand, so much easier to make a painting with, because, you know, generally we want to buy all the colors on the planet. You can't even see my face. Generally, we want to fill up our palette with all the colors on the planet so that we can make whatever we see in front of us. But that kind of configuration of palette is one of the most difficult things that you can deal with. Only the most advanced artists like Richard Schmid, if you look at his book, Alla Prima, this is where, you know, I've done charts for years and years, but that's where I first got the idea of these color charts. And he's got, I don't know how many colors on his palette, like 15 different colors. And they're all intense. He could work with it, but me, not so much. You know, I would need to really, really focus on it for a long time in order to kind of really understand it. But if you have a well-balanced, minimal palette, limited palette, it's easy to make a painting that doesn't have any discordant colors in it, any notes that are just jarring to the viewer, that draw the eye more than anything else. But with this color, Phthalo Blue, you have to be really careful, or I have to be really careful with this palette when I use it. I'm going to try it, because if I bring this blue in here, it has to be used very intelligently. It really has to be used intelligently and balanced out in some way with something else in the whole painting, or else you'll make this color that attracts so much attention that the rest of the painting is almost meaningless. So yeah, that's reason why these palettes really work. The Zorn palette works is because it makes it easier for you to understand color. It makes it easier for you to not go too far out of a range of colors or values or whatever, to keep a harmonious painting going. But let's step outside of it once I start using this palette for one of the next paintings. Yeah, it's gonna be a learning process, let me tell you. Now all I have left is 3 columns. I'm out of energy today. I'm going to do those tomorrow, but it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of greens I can get with Phthalo Blue and Yellow Ochre. They're definitely going to be closer to something around here. So neutralizing this Phthalo Blue down to a Yellow Ochre, going to be fun. Okay, I'll see you on the next video for that. Thank you for watching.